Graphics card sag. It's no good.
I mean, look at this. It's almost a full degree of tilt, and to the human eye, that is very noticeable. It's also potentially damaging for the graphics card long term. Over time, constant sagging coupled with multiple thermal cycles can result in blue screens, artifacting, even outright system shutdowns in the middle of intensive gaming sessions. These tiny balls of solder can become dislodged as PCBs underneath them bend, and that can result in what we just described. Things you don't want to see in the middle of gaming. So we've established then the graphics card sag not only looks awful, I think all of us can agree on that one, but it's also potentially damaging long term. And in this video, I want to talk about what we can do to fix it. No, it's not the obvious little angle bracket or like a 3D printed stand. This is something much more clever that I think you will like. Stay with me.
To get rid of that annoying Windows activation watermark, head on over to VIP SCD Key. Purchase a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for a fraction of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, enter your product key into your PC settings window, and say bye-bye to the watermark. And be sure to use our offer code SKGS for a sweet discount.
I'll cut right to the chase then. I'll be talking about this product for the remainder of the video, Lian Li's GB001. Interesting name. See, while your standard brackets like these tend to make themselves known relatively quickly, I mean, it's difficult to hide something like this since it's adapted straight to the rear PCIe slots. This kit adapts to your motherboard, meaning it goes totally unnoticed, and I think that's the best thing about it. So here's what you get in the box. Of course, the bracket itself, and then you're gonna get your mounting gear. This is to secure it to your motherboard. You're actually going to use the standoffs in your case and then adapt additional standoffs on top of those to not only keep the motherboard secure, but also support the bracket and the little leg that's gonna prop up the card. Here's how to set it up. First, you gotta remove that big chungus of a graphics card already in your system. Then, figure out what female thread type your motherboard standoffs currently support. This is 632s, and this is M3. M3 is the finer threading. Lian Li says their bracket can be installed in the center lower standoff location, so that'd be here and here, although I've actually had better success installing it here and here, closer to the bottom right side of the board. This may come in more handy if your card is especially beefy. You can see the lower right screw in this build is already missing, and that's because I plan to install the bracket on the lower right side of the board. Take 2 additional M3 screws along with the bracket and fasten them to those standoffs. You'll notice the tolerances here are very tight, and that is by design. Of course, a graphics card is going to be on top of this, right? So you can't have things protruding above a certain distance. That's why most motherboard chipset heat sinks and SATA ports and the like aren't very high. At this point, I do want to mention there are a few negative reviews online regarding the fitment and the clearance between the motherboard and this bracket. Apparently there are some boards that are just too tall. The things on them protrude too much, and that prevents you from securing this correctly. I haven't run into that issue with the few boards I've tested this kit with. However, if you do and you bought it through, say, Amazon, you can always just return it. Be sure to actually fit it within the return window so you can get your money back if you have an issue. I don't expect you will. Most boards shouldn't have this clearance issue, but if you have maybe a premium board with a very beefy heatsink around the chipset, you might be cutting it a bit close. Time for the card to go back in, and oh my gosh, this fit is super snug, but I like it. All that empty space goes bye-bye. Now take one of these feet. Well, that's what I call them, feet. I don't know what Lian Li calls them. They actually give you 2 of these, but I find you only need 1, and then another M3 screw. You've got the card installed, and you can see where the bracket holes are lining up currently. Now, the card is sagging as is, so I'm gonna wanna lift this card up a bit, and that's about where I'm gonna want it to sit. I'm gonna have to hold this up and get that foot along with that screw into the uppermost exposed hole on that bracket. So while holding the card up, that right there should do it, and the card will now rest on the rubber foot. Actually, I should raise it just a tad more. So this will be a bit of trial and error. And yeah, something like that there I think is gonna be a lot better. Make sure that's good and tight. These heavier cards will definitely take their toll. And here we are, that's it. It was about 3 or 4 minutes worth of installing. That's it, just removing the card, getting the bracket in, repositioning the card, adjusting the foot on the bracket so that things are nice and horizontal. You want 90-degree angles if possible. And wow, this is just a night and day difference. It's so minimalistic, you can't see the bracket at all really unless you know what you're looking for. You can see a bit of the exposed bracket above here and just a tad below, although most folks aren't going to lean down and look underneath the graphics card in question. It's just not what a lot of people do. But all in all, I'm super satisfied with the look and the installation process. Now, my one gripe with this bracket is that Lian Li is charging a decent chunk of change for this. I definitely think it could be cheaper. I've looked up the materials for all these parts on Alibaba, and you can find most of this stuff for literally pennies. So I think there's a healthy markup going on behind the scenes. Is it worth it still even at that price? I would say so, especially for the heavier cards. If your card doesn't have a bracket included, I think most of them should, but for whatever reason it doesn't, or you don't want to use it, you want something much stealthier, I mean, this is an option. I will have it linked below. I also want to point out that this card in particular ships with a very similar bracket that leverages the same mounting points in the case, but I don't like using that one, especially for this case from NZXT, because of clearance issues. It just cuts way too close to the cable bar up front, and the tolerances were just, they weren't really cutting it for me. In this case, for the boards I've used it with, it fits perfectly. I, again, love how stealthy it is. It's practically a universal fit. It's a really clever solution to an increasingly serious problem. The fatter these cards get, the more they tend to sag. You're gonna need some sort of anti-sag tech. As simple as this is, it's probably the most effective solution I've seen yet. In fact, why not? I've got a different card in here now. This is a 3090. It's not quite as beefy, and you can see that this little foot here is not interfering at all with the fans in the card. Lian Li also gives you extra rubber feet in case you want to add or take away. There's something to be said for beefy cards that are horizontal and not sagging. Sagging cards, it doesn't matter how expensive the rig is, sagging cards are just never desirable. It just, to me, it tarnishes the aesthetic of it, and there's always a lot of folks in the comments pointing out the sagging rigs that you see in fix or flop videos, PCDC videos, etc. So I'm gonna try to get my hands on several of these kits so that in the future we can remedy this. So for one, we don't have people screaming at us in the comment section, and for two, it takes care of my own OCD issues because it bothers me as well. I don't want to call it out every time I see it because it's very easy to come across like an elitist here. I get accused of that all the time, even though I feel like I'm in the safe zone, but I still get accused of it. I'd rather just fix it instead of complain about it. And this kit from Lian Li is the best I've seen so far. It's the most subdued, but it makes good use of already existing hardware mounting locations. It doesn't stand out at all. It doesn't look ugly. In fact, you wouldn't even know it's there if you didn't know what to look for.
Build better and smarter with the Corsair iQ Link ecosystem, a leap forward in PC building aimed at reducing cable clutter and maximizing hardware compatibility. Run a single controller with the iQ System Hub and manage all of your RGB devices through revamped software. The hub fits almost anywhere in your case and allows for up to 7 connected devices in a single cable design spanning across fans, coolers, power supplies, cases, and more from Corsair. Click the link below to learn more.
With that, I will have the GB001, interesting name, Lian Li, linked in the video description, along with the easy DIY bracket if you want something cheaper. I will say though, now that I have seen the light, this bracket is a bit trickier to install, especially with larger cards. First off, you have to kind of finesse the PCI slot area a bit. And then in my experience with larger cards like the RTX 4080 here, this thing is so heavy that I actually have to slightly raise the bracket from a flat kind of horizontal orientation in order to support the weight of the card. So if I want the card to be flat, the bracket below it has to be angled upward, which I think defeats the purpose of, like, you know, you want horizontal runs all around. You want nice 90-degree lines, and it just looked really weird with a beefy card, which is why I was using the stock solution that Gigabyte included with the model. But I like this a lot. I mean, Lian Li did a good job. I know this probably isn't like the only solution like this out there, but it's the first time I've come across it, and I wanted to share it with all of you. If you enjoyed watching this one, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will catch you in the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.